is Joe Sonona coming to you live with Sonona Speaks Seminars Coffee Talk special segments this week with my good friend Brigitte, Malik from the Inspection Boys of Nassau and Suffolk. Welcome to the show, Brigitte.
Thank you so much, Joe, for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, anytime, anytime. So why I brought you onto this show was because listing pros in real estate do some sort of preparation for their listing. They do a lot of preparation, I should say, for their listings. And I wanted to bring you on to illustrate the inspection, not just the inspection home buying process, but the role of the seller during the inspection and what the seller could be doing pre-listing. So this way we can have a smooth inspection with our buyers as we continue the process of trying to sell their home. Can you elaborate on what you do for the sellers now before they list their home?
Absolutely. And, it's so important actually, because we've been really trying to market that a little bit better and educate agents and sellers as well on the importance of getting a pre-listing inspection. And, this is a great opportunity before buyers come in or anything like that for the seller to get a full inspection, just like we would normally do for a buyer. And, we go through all the mechanicals, heating systems, electrical, plumbing, everything, roof, foundation of the whole structure of the house. And then we provide an in-depth report to the seller. And also it'll still include a termite inspection as well. And the benefit of this is it gives the seller an opportunity to take a look and see, hey, is there anything on here that I want to go ahead and fix before a buyer comes in and their lawyers get involved and they try to go through the back and forth of, negotiations or please fix this, please fix that. This is a really good way for the seller to get a better idea of the current condition of their house. And, it gives them an opportunity to avoid any type of, lowering any type of prices or however you guys handle that on that end. It really gives them a good opportunity to fix those items.
Had I known then what I know now, I probably would have a pre-inspection done for all my listings back then, because like you said, it does avoid the pitfalls of of negotiating and renegotiating after the home inspector process comes in. But to a seller, what should they be looking out for to avoid any type of conversation or to have any of that renegotiating in this. And what I don't understand is why buyers do that after a home inspection is done. Can you elaborate on both? Like, what should the seller be doing first? And then why is it that a buyer does that?
So the seller I really highly encourage sellers to get the pre-inspection, because it's going to give them a better idea. Now, once a buyer gets involved, buyers always feel like, and unfortunately, even during the home inspection process, we have to try to set the realities to the buyer sometimes that, with the current market, the seller may not fix, all these small items. There's no perfect house. And we're trying to explain that to them. Like, if you go back and forth, you may be at risk of losing your offer on the house because they may go with the next person. Now, there's a difference between small cosmetic items and the bigger, items that are wrong in a house. And we try to explain that, like, if it's something bigger, then, you may want to, it may be worth a conversation. But, sometimes buyers are just also nitpicking because they want that cheaper price or they want, everything perfect. And it's not the realities either, unfortunately. And, sometimes it's hard because we're trying to explain that properly to them, but sometimes buyers just also want to hear what they want to hear too.
And what do you think the sellers should be prepared to present when you come in?
So when we're doing the inspection, especially, you want to make sure that we have easy access to everything. Electrical panels, sometimes sellers may have, storage in front of the panels, and you really want to make sure that they move all that stuff so that we can access it readily. Because the last thing you want to do, especially from the home inspection process, is we don't want to be delayed where now we have to come back and check something because it wasn't made available the initial time of the inspection. So it could be electrical panels, boilers. Sometimes if it's tenant occupied, they don't have access to the heating areas, which, that's something we're always checking. Crawl spaces, if, we want to see if there's access to crawl spaces. The attics is a big thing because sometimes the access could be inside of a closet in a bathroom, say for an example. And if we don't have, easy access into that access point for the attic, that's not going to be something that we're going to be able to inspect. So just making sure that we have easy access to avoid any type of delays when it comes, during the transaction.
Okay. Well, if I was a seller, do you think that, being that you are hired by the buyer, do you think that I can use your inspection report and give it to a buyer? Because a lot of sellers ask me that question.
So like if a seller hires us to do a pre-listing inspection, so that's a great question. So we do offer, if a seller were to hire us and we do the pre-listing inspections, we have a secure database that we can upload that inspection report onto that website so that the buyer can review that report. Now, it's up to the buyer's discretion whether or not they want to go ahead and hire their own inspector, and that's completely, acceptable as well. But we do make that report available to the buyer so that they could, they can examine that inspection report. And, just like the sellers, if the buyer has any questions, they can always reach out to us too, and we'll answer that. But, it's still up to a buyer whether or not they want to have, their own home inspector come in.
I see. And what specifically, what measures are you taking, these days in a post-COVID-19, pre-COVID-19 measure? What are you doing now to ensure the seller that, say your people are okay? Do you have any of those measures in place?
Absolutely. I mean, so right now, what we're doing is all the inspectors have to go through a COVID-19 training course with Internagi, which is a home inspector organization that we all get certified through. On top of the state certifications that we go through, we also get certified through them. So there's a course that all the inspectors are doing. Then all the inspectors have to abide, by the current OSHA standards of, what's acceptable, how to properly social distancing, proper PPP. So we're all wearing gloves, masks. Some of the inspectors have chosen to wear goggles, which is fine. But where everybody's wearing proper gloves and mask. I got that reversed. Mask, gloves, and even shoe booties too. Sometimes the sellers want us to. They don't want any of our shoes on, so we're using shoe booties as well. And we're just trying to maintain that social distancing as well.
What should the buyer be prepared for when they come in with you in that COVID-19, post-COVID-19 environment?
And that's really the most difficult part, I would say right now, is explaining to the buyers that this is not the normal pre-COVID-19 experience, unfortunately. As an inspection company, we go into the house and we have to, respect the seller's wishes as well. So just recently we had an inspection where the buyers were very adamant about being inside the house while we were inspecting. This just happened a few days ago. And the sellers just tried to explain, look, you guys don't look sick, but I'm not comfortable with all you guys in my house at the same time. The inspectors, they can come in, they can do their job, but we're not comfortable with everybody in at the same time. And there's a reality with that right now, unfortunately. So as a home inspection company, we're trying to go above and beyond as far as overly communicating with the client on what's going on with the house, right? So during the inspection, we're doing our normal process. And then when we get outside, we're explaining everything as detailed as we can. And then in the reports, we're including a lot of extra photos right now so that they have more of a visual aspect of what's happening in the house. So that extra step of communication is really key right now. And we have to also, we have to abide by, especially if the house is occupied, what the sellers are comfortable with. And sometimes the buyers, they don't own the house yet, so it's a harsh reality right now. We're trying to, really play that happy medium and just trying to diffuse the situation as much as possible.
Do you, when you go into a property and you do a thorough inspection, can you walk us through the process? Like I used you myself, and I know you have two gentlemen that come into the property as well, and you do a very good job, by the way, a very professional company as well. I will speak very highly of you all the time because you hold yourself to a very high standard. But can you explain what you're looking out for so this way every seller out there knows what to expect?
Absolutely. So typically, each inspector has their own way of inspecting. My way is different than everybody else, but we all have the general same, rules or standards of where we start at. So all the inspections always start off on the exterior of the house. So we always start that off because it gives us a better idea of different things that we need to be on the lookout when we get inside the house as well. So if we notice a house that has no gutters, now I know when I go inside that basement or crawl space, whatever it is, I really need to be, weary and check out for moisture intrusion or high levels of moisture, mold, things like that. So the exterior really starts to tell the story. Home inspections is a story, and that's really what I like to explain to people is we're putting together a story of since the house was built up till now and just trying to gather as many pieces of that story as possible. So once we get inside, I like to start, and I train all my staff to do the same thing, is we like to start from the top and work our way down. Reason for that is some people ask, why don't we start with the utilities first? I want to get the water running in that house for as long as possible to try to see if any type of leaks arise. So I like to start from the top so that there's any, bathrooms or anything like that, I can get the water going, on that. And then we go each floor at a time. So, top, then the first floor, and then we go with the basement. And that's just really, we want to really see if there's any leaks that come up. Many times, by the time we're done, if there is a leak, we may find it, happening. We may see like small patches of wet drywall on the first floor, or even the basement. We'll start to see, puddling from water pipes and so forth. So now, not to contradict myself, but I leave the attic for last. The reason why is because we never know what we're going to, experience in the attic. If it's a really clean attic, great. But if it's a really dirty attic, we don't want to be walking around the house all dirty. So I like to leave the attics for last, and then the crawl spaces for last as well, because we just don't know what we're going to encounter when we go into those. The last thing I want to do is have anybody, walk around dirty from going into those areas. And then we end the house.
Good point about, top and, bottom and middle. I was on a listing presentation, and during my tour, I noticed this big stain on the first floor. Second floor was above that, the bedroom. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, was it a burst of a pipe? So I asked the lady, I said, is this a stain over here? And she says, no. That was when, my son was very little. He took a can of soda, he shook it, and it went all over the ceiling. So I looked around and I'm like, where is Johnny, little Johnny? And she's like, oh, he's in college right now. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, this whole time the stain has been there since the time he was little. Talk about memory preservation. So I was sitting there, I'm thinking, what will a home inspector think? Or what will a buyer think? So when you encounter these type of situations, especially a pre-inspection for homeowners, because that's what listing pros do. They get a pre-inspection of each house, provided that the homeowner will pay for such an expense. Is your pricing different for a homeowner than it is for a buyer on inspection, or is it pretty much the same?
It's pretty much the same. Because we're still doing the same exact home inspection. Because from our standpoint, a pre-listing, we're trying to be even more diligent in that, because we want to try to, find whatever's going on in that house, because we know, hey, if the buyer gets another home inspection company, we don't want that company to come back and say that we missed XYZ. So we're trying to do just as thorough, if not even more thorough, if that's even possible, because we try to really be as thorough as we can. And just trying to cover the basis, because we're really trying to do a service to the client, especially the seller, so that they can avoid any type of unknowns issues coming back. And that's within reason, because sometimes something may happen that wasn't present at the original time of the inspection. But we really try to go above and beyond as much as we can.
Awesome. And if there is something major with the house, such as, bad electric or termites, or which we're going to get to termites in any second.
That's a big one.
That is a good one. The environmental part of the inspection is very key. But if there is something wrong with the electric, the plumbing, the heating, the roof, you're not going to sit there and quote pricing on what the estimate, even if the homeowner says, "Oh, how much is that going to cost me?"
We can't give them an exact price, unfortunately. If they really try to push us for like a ballpark, we'll give them a ballpark, but it's going to be a very generalized, not exact by any means, and we're not even, we can't give that, because that's when, especially when it comes to the roofs, roofers, the prices change dramatically when it comes to roofing companies. So we just, we explain what it is that we're finding, what the problem is, and then, if they would like further quotes or further, pricing, that's when they would have to reach out to that person, whether it's HVAC company or so forth. We don't have access to, those vendors' pricing.
Okay, that's awesome. Now let's talk about termites. First of all, the banks require the termite inspection, but do they require on that form? I forgot the name of the form that you guys use. What is the form?
NMPA 33 form.
Now, on that 33 form, it says live infestation. That doesn't necessarily just mean termites, right? It means something else in addition to.
It could mean any type of wood-destroying organisms that are present. So termites is the most prominent on Long Island, but it could be carpenter bees. It could be so many different things.
How about powder post beetles?
Yes, I'm sorry. That's what I meant, powder post beetles. But it could be any wood-destroying organism that lives within the, in that eats framing or bites through wood framing or anything like that. So it's not specific to termites. So we're looking out for anything, any type of damage that could be caused from any of those wood destroying organisms. That's what they like to call it, wood destroying organisms, because there's so many different ones that could do something.
Right. Well,
termites is the most common in Long Island.
Termites. How about radon gas?
Radon. Okay, that's a great one. So radon, if it's a house, Long Island and most of New York City is known to have lower levels of radon. However, the EPA does have a map that's available that anybody could, look up, and it tells you where different hot zones may be. Radon, you could be in one house, and the house next to you could have extremely high levels of radon. It's causes from uranium. So Long Island is known to have lower levels of it. But with that taken into account, there have been situations that have come up where we've had houses come up with higher levels of radon. So you're not in the complete clear, but most houses in Long Island are known to be lower levels of radon. We've seen actually a large influx of radon inspective come around recently.
Long Island?
Yeah. In Long Island, yeah, because it's considered an inexpensive addition to the home inspection, and it kind of gives you a peace of mind because you can't smell it, you cannot see it. The gas just needs small little foundation cracks, which most houses have, small hairline cracks, and the gas will come through there. And usually the basements will have the highest level, so that's why we do the testing in the basements. And then it goes through the rest of the house. So radon causes lung cancer, which is why a lot of people have been opting to do that inspection in addition. Now, if you have a property that's located in the Bronx or anywhere upstate, that's where we highly recommend a radon inspection, because the radon levels go much higher from there.
And what about asbestos? Let's talk about that.
So asbestos is, in quite a lot of, home inspections, especially older properties, you'll see, the pipes that will be covered in asbestos-like material. And especially vinyl flooring, some of those old vinyl tiles that are in houses, they could possibly have asbestos too. We can't say as a home inspection company definitively at an inspection if it's asbestos or not, because an asbestos company would have to come out and test that sample to see if it has asbestos. It can be very expensive at times. So we always, explain to the buyers or the sellers, whoever's there, that asbestos is pretty much dangerous is if it starts to flake off or it becomes airborne. So, some people just, they don't touch that piping ever. And as long as the piping's in good condition, it is what it is. But at some point, if something were to break in that pipe, they would probably have to replace that. And that's when, it may get a little bit more pricey when it comes to replacing whatever sections are there that possibly could have asbestos in it.
And do you have any other environmental? I could think of one. Oil tank, a buried oil tank. How do you handle that?
So buried oil tanks, it's a very limited inspection, unfortunately. If it's above ground, we can inspect the oil tank and we're inspecting the lines that we could see. But when it's an underground oil tank, we're really limited to pretty much the lines that we see from the boiler to the exterior wall, if that's even present, if that's even visible. And then as far as the oil tank on the exterior, there's not really much that we can do. We can't dig up the tank. We can't look at the tank or anything like that. So it's very limited inspection. And typically, that would be when an environmental company, like a phase 1 inspection, would get involved if need be. Some people, don't do that. Some people do. But that's usually where a phase 1 environmental company would get involved to actually do a more thorough inspection. And even that's usually just a soil test. And there's so many different levels to a phase 1, and they have phase 2 inspections and so forth. But that's really environmental specialist companies that get involved there.
Are there any other environmental hazards that you look out for?
Lead paint. Lead paint is kind of, it's usually only dangerous if you start to eat the paint usually. However, New York, we have a lot of older houses. So most of the time that original paint that could have lead has been already repainted over numerous times. So that's a common thing that we get a lot of questions about is lead paint. You mentioned about the asbestos. Cesspools is another one. We do. Yeah. So cesspools, all our inspections include, plumbing inspection, which includes testing the cesspool system. But even cesspools, we can't open the tank or, dig up to find the access hole. We don't do any of that. And it's really important that, agents and clients of theirs are educated on that, because most home inspection companies are not going to be able to examine the septic tank or anything like that, because it's just not readily accessible. So we usually tell people with septic tanks, there's always some type of maintenance on these systems. And it's really important people know that you can't just have a system, a sewage system, that's really what it is, and not maintain it. So you really want to have a company come out who is going to insert a camera and really examine the septic tank, see how full it is, and so forth. And there is ongoing maintenance. Now, it's not something that has to get done, often, but there is ongoing maintenance. And it's even coming down to the type of toilet paper that you use in the house is what's going to, make that septic, tank last even longer, where you don't have to.
I'm sure there's a lot of problems in a post-COVID-19 environment with cesspools, being that everybody ran out to get toilet paper. But no, this is very informative. There's another I don't know if you call it an environmental issue, but in the older homes, the galvanized plumbing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, right.
So
Is
that
that
is a
environmental?
huge
That's
thing.
plumbing, right? That's plumbing.
Yes, yes, yes. That's going to be on the drain lines typically. It's a huge problem because a lot of people think, even my own house, when we got my own house, I saw galvanized plumbing when we started opening up, during renovations, and I told my husband, you got to take that out right now. Like, so he was so angry at me, and because from the outside it looked fine, and then when he actually cut it down and to go replace it, it was all corroded inside. So that's what galvanized normally does. It'll corrode from the inside out, and you won't know until there's a huge issue. So when we took out our plumbing or our galvanized pipe, let's just say the pipe was this wide on the outside. That's just an example.
Mhm.
We only had maybe a little bit bigger than a finger of room to actually of water to drain out of there. So
Wow.
it was extremely corroded, and that's why it's so important that as a home inspection company, we're on the lookout for these things, because if it may not be causing a problem at that moment, but it could at any moment. And galvanized is very notorious. Even if you watch any of those, I like watching those flippers TV shows,
I
and they
don't.
always talk about. I enjoy like seeing everything that they find. But they even talk about quite often galvanized piping, and most of the time I've never come across a house where it's everywhere. Normally it's just small sections, but if you do see it, we recommend that you get that area replaced, just to avoid any type of future issues.
How about bayfront homes? The checking for foundations and sinking foundations or the integrity of the foundation walls. Do you do stuff like that too in your business?
So all the inspections that we do all include foundation and structural inspections, especially the waterfront houses that were affected maybe by Superstorm Sandy or anything like that. We're definitely trying to take extra care in inspecting those homes a little bit more for foundation issues, and so we just try to do our due diligence. Usually in those areas there may be like a smaller crawl space point, so we really try to make sure to get in there. But it's really important to also, for the buyers to try to find, try to see from maybe the sellers or something, what happened during that time too, because they may be able to give a lot more insight as well. But yes, all our inspections include a structural inspection to the best that we can see as well.
And some people, they weigh their options between home inspectors and engineers, right? And you're
Yeah.
both very professional. But tell me something that not differentiates you from an engineer, but something that qualifies you more so, your company. And this will be the last question, I promise. But something that qualifies you more so as something that the engineer has in qualifications as well, because a lot of people don't know, should they go engineer, should they go home inspector, but you seem to be doing things that engineers do as well, and that's something that has shifted my focus, my mindset from engineer to home inspector now.
And that's such a great question, because there's a lot of good engineering companies out there that do home inspections, right? I've seen some of them, and they do a good job. But there's also a lot of engineering companies that they don't actually include anything that a home inspection report includes. So I can't say, I can't badmouth anybody or anything like that. I could say that as a home inspection company, we're trying to do the utmost and as much as we can to give you the most, information possible in that inspection report. Our education and qualifications, we have to go through the state for education requirements. So we have to follow what the state provides. And then we also are constantly doing continuing education. We have to, every year we have to get or every 2 years we have to get a certain number of continuing ed credits. So every year we're always putting, all the inspectors through continuous education to try to learn as much information as possible. Because we want to be able to, explain things properly to our clients with the correct type of information. So we're always trying to stay on top of everything to make sure we understand things. Now, within reason, if there's something that we notice, maybe we go into the basement and then there's a large issue, we do have engineers that we work very closely with that we will bring in, and they'll come and see what's going on. And we've had to bring them in a few times because perhaps it could be a really bad foundation problem, and we explain that. And we can recommend a good quality engineer that we work closely with, and they'll come in and they'll also give a further estimate or evaluation onto what needs to be done.
That's awesome. Hey, this was great. This was informative. For all our listers out there, all our listing agents out there, for our buyers agents out there. This is the inspection company that I highly recommend. There are so many great companies out there as well. And choose your inspector very carefully and make them a trusted partner, a trusted vendor in your business model. And for listing agents, I highly recommend a pre-check on your home, just to see that some of these little nuances don't come up during a purchase. So, Brigitte, thank you so much for being on this program. This meant a lot to me to have you for our second installment of special segments. Actually, you're my third installment. And we will have you back here and talk on more tips that a homeowner can get for the pre-check. And this was worth it. This was really worth having you here today.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. And, we're always available for any type of questions anybody may have.
What's your phone number? You want to give your phone number, please?
Absolutely. It's, let me get my card because we have a few different phone numbers. 516-591-3262. If anybody needs anything, we're the Inspection Boys. We cover all of Long Island and New York City, and we're here to help with your home inspection needs.
And the 5 boroughs too, right? You do 5 boroughs?
Yeah, all the 5 boroughs. Yep, all of New York City.
Great. Well, thank you so much again. This is Joe Sonona, Sonona Speaks Seminars, Coffee Talk, special segments. And this week, my guest was Brigitte Malik from the Inspection Boys of Nassau, Suffolk, New York City, and throughout. Have a good day, everybody. I look forward to our next segment. Take care. Bye-bye.